Welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. Have you been tired lately? Does everything your bones hurt? It's too much, and the only thing you really want to do is get home, sit down, and turn on the TV. Well, if that's how your life is going, I've got a book that might help you. It's by my guest, Dr. Eva Quinar, and it is called The Fatigue Solution: Increase Your Energy in 8 Easy Steps, and it's published by Hay House. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for writing this book, because the first thing I'm saying to people is, what did you have for breakfast?
Well, that's an important question, and I raise that question because in my practice, I have a lot of women who come in just fatigued, and they go to their doctors, and their doctors say, it's aging, you're working too hard, you've got marital stress, you're concerned about your children, and they just simplify the equation and say, there's nothing I can do. And I really felt that this book needed to be written to identify certain problems and also to help manage people's daily lives. And chapter 1, which is about food and eating, always amuses me because I have the patient who says, I eat healthy, I eat organic, I watch my calories, and then when I start questioning them, it turns out that almost all of them will start their morning with either a fruit or a carbohydrate.
It's interesting, too, because in the first part of the book, you do talk about yourself and how having children and trying to be a doctor, trying to be a wife, putting everything in that bowl in front of you, it was too much.
Well, this book started out to be a story about myself. I mean, I had a career, I had responsibilities outside of my career, my children, my husband, but after the birth of my second child, all I wanted to do was go home and go to sleep. And I had a caregiver take care of my children. It wasn't like I was even involved with my own family. I gave everything to my patients, and there was nothing left for me or my family. And so I went from doctor to doctor. I had gotten sick constantly, upper respiratory tract infections, just insomnia, even though I was sleeping, just my hormones were a mess. And I started looking outside of my own training, which is an academic one, and started looking at alternatives.
We should tell them you're an endocrinologist.
I am an endocrinologist and metabolic specialist. So what that means is I am a hormone specialist dealing with thyroid, obesity, diabetes, menopause, men that have low testosterone. And I trained at NYU, and now I'm at staff at Cedars and an assistant professor of medicine at UCLA. So I came from a very academic background, had access to the top doctors in this country, and still nobody could tell me what was wrong. And it started on a self-journey for myself. And
Doctor healed myself.
Well,
Yeah.
I did it. I did it, and I took that formula and started healing my other patients, and I could only touch one person at a time. So again, writing this book has been fantastic because it has reached people all over the world. It's been published in several different languages and really now on every continent.
Question, how does this fatigue you're talking about differ from something called chronic fatigue?
Chronic fatigue is based on Epstein-Barr virus, and it's completely different than what I talk about. What I talk about is nutrition, exercise, sleep, and how it affects cortisol levels, your thyroid, PMS, perimenopause, menopause, and also it discusses the tests that you become empowered to ask your doctor by reading this book, because there's so many tests that can be done and just aren't done because we don't have enough time spent with our physicians these days.
The first one has to do, because there are 8 areas you talk about.
There are 8 simple steps.
Let's begin with your breakfast. And your dinner, there should be red meat.
Well, there should be protein. I mean, I'm a big advocate of red meat, and I usually do that for a dinner time. What I think has put a lot of diabetes in our society and a lot of other morbidity and mortality is the fear of raising the cholesterol and people staying away from red meats, which we now know really balance the rest of our hormones, the rest of our nutrition. And we find that we've become more and more insulin resistant by not eating products that have that red meat or protein in it, which is more dangerous in the long run for coronary artery disease and stroke. And so, I mean, I can go on and on about that, but there's science behind this book.
Yeah. Now we get to toxins in your body, getting your gut in order.
Well, this chapter is really designed for those people who feel like their stomach walks in before they do. I hear that all the time from my patients. Yeah. And it's that bloat, it's that gassiness. And really, when you do all the testing, you find out that it is from toxins. We eat a lot of soy in our diet, the tofu, the edamame, the soy milk. And soy actually has a lot of pesticides in it. And it can wreak hormonal havoc as well, and that causes bloat.
How does that affect, say, colonoscopies, where they may take out one little polyp, but they said, oh, it was precancerous?
Well, that has to do with your diet as well, but what I talk about is different than the precancerous aspect. I'm talking about the discomfort and the fatigue that comes from having the irritable bowel syndrome, the bloat, the toxins. You look at our fish, it's loaded with mercury. It's just loaded with other toxins. So again, this book identifies what you're eating that might contribute to those toxins, what tests you should do. A perfect example would be the patient that wants to lose weight and so drinks a lot of diet sodas or uses a lot of artificial sweeteners. That creates tremendous inflammation, not just in the gut, but also in the hands and the joints and the feet. So again, little things like that, even though they're low calorie or no calorie, your metabolism can't function, and so you can't digest the rest of your foods.
One sort of item that I grew up as a child with, and I didn't hear it in this book, prunes and prune juice.
Well, that helps for the digestion. It does, but it's really important to note that those foods are also high in sugar. And
even as a sort of, fresh off the prune.
It is. It's a carbohydrate. So when you do that, it's really necessary for you to have some kind of protein along with it. For instance, I don't suggest that as just a snack in the middle or the end of the day. If it's after a meal, if it's with a slice of cheese, whether it be cottage cheese or string cheese, that's a much better approach to taking a prune.
The same person who is suffering from fatigue solution often can't get to sleep at night.
And that is a catch-22, because if they can't sleep, you're going to wake up exhausted. So this book does give you simple tips on what to do initially to fall asleep, as well as gives you certain herbal remedies. We try to avoid the prescription drugs, but even then there is a time and place that I say it's okay, because your body, your brain has stages that it goes through, and sometimes it's about a feedback mechanism. Sometimes it's just about telling the brain how to think again, and those pills can help. But we really reserve that to the end. It's as simple as make sure the room is dark, make sure the room is cold.
Don't exercise before sleep.
Absolutely. When you exercise late at night, and remember, I speak as an endocrinologist in this book, and so I base it on hormones. When you exercise at night, it creates certain hormones to assimilate in the body, the neurotransmitters, the norepinephrine, the epinephrine, the serotonins, and so it's much harder for the brain then to calm itself down and be able to start entering in the first stage of sleep. I also talk about the person that's not just having a difficult time getting to sleep, but the person who's having a difficult time staying asleep. So many of my patients have no problem getting to sleep, but they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they can't fall back to sleep. And that's also, it sets up a pattern for the rest of the day. We are creatures of habit. If we get into that pattern, it's very difficult to get out. And so the book gives you hints that you can do on your own, and also questions to ask your doctor what you should be tested for if that is indeed your medical problem.
What tests would that be?
Cortisol. You have to check what we call an adrenal salivary index, which is prescribed by your physician, but something that you take home and do yourself. because cortisol is one of those hormones that isn't the same in the morning as it is in the afternoon, that it is in the evening. So you really have to have the cycle of what's happening, or the diurnal effect for yourself. And then based on that, it's evidence-based what we do. And most of the time with my practice, at least, I'm able to treat it herbally, or able to identify what the person's doing wrong to the day to stimulate or to diminish.
Number 4 is a 3-letter word called sex.
Oh, yes.
When you are working with a patient on that, do you see both of them?
No, I see eventually when I fix one person, whether it be the husband or the wife, then the spouse will come in because the effects have been so good, and usually the other partner can't keep up. I do have a lot of men who have lost their libido. We have Viagra, so we have something for erectile dysfunction, but most of the people that I see don't even want to have sex, and it's ruining their marriage. And so, again, there's lots of testing that we need to do. Most of my women over the age of 40 complain that their marriages are falling apart because they have no desire to have sex, and then their partner can't understand that. It's very normal for women, I mean, it's the norm, I should say, for women over the age of 40 to have very, very low testosterone.
Is that because they're married to the same man? I mean, it's, you know, I used to say it has to do like with your washer dryer. After 20 years, you had to get a new set. Is that all there is when you look at the partner?
No, I think that before we had really great laboratory assays, we would say that. We'd be like, you're with the same person. Again, you've got tons on your mind. When are you going to get away? The kids might step in the room. And it really, in my research, in my practice, I have found that it's very biochemical. We weren't meant to procreate. If you look at history over the last 1,000 years, I mean, most of the childbearing that used to happen was in the teens and the 20s, a little bit in the 30s. So our bodies really aren't set up to have that sexual desire after the age of 40, but our lifestyles do. And so what I find is to boost up your hormones, whether you're a man or a woman, really does affect the brain. It's all about neurotransmitters, and they have active sex lives.
And the other part is, along with having protein for your breakfast, it doesn't hurt to have sex.
Because, again, when I talk about the diurnal effect of our hormones, you know, being stronger in the morning, being less at night, when you have sex in the morning, first of all, it puts a smile on your face for the rest of the day, and it does bring couples closer together, I find. But also, it starts stimulating what we need to fight our fatigue. You know, after all, this book is about fatigue. You have certain hormones that get spurted out when you also have that intimacy in the morning, and it lasts you most of the day. So for many levels, I suggest sex in the morning.
And if you don't, check your thyroid.
Check your thyroid. So there are hundreds and thousands of people in America alone that have undiagnosed hypothyroidism. And part of that is because most thyroids don't get checked until over the age of 65. It's not part of a routine blood panel. And also, it's not always read appropriately by the physician, or not the complete panel is done. They screen it, but they don't go into the actual divergence of the thyroid. So I have found, and this is a statistical analysis that is readily read by most places on the internet and most textbooks.